Do not come.
I'm gonna come.
What's up, dissidents, one and all? This is the Do Dissidents podcast. Keaton Weiss here with Russell Dobular.
Hello.
We apologize. We were fact-checking a few things, as Elon would say. We'll be on in a moment. We're just, we're fact-checking a few things. Have to fact-check a few things, right?
Yeah, we had to fire the attorney responsible for fact-checking.
We found out that Jim Baker was meddling with our stream, and we had to fire him. He was giving us a hard time about leaving. He kept insisting there was a briefcase he had to come back and get. We say, no, that's ours now, bitch. Get the fuck out.
That's the oldest trick in the book.
Yeah.
Not getting us with that.
Yeah, no. You get the hell out of here, right? So that's what we got going on there. No, in all seriousness, we were doing some last-minute tech fixes to a video that we put together. Russell put together today, and we actually shot this video with the help of fan and patron, who I believe is on the stream right now. He just commented there, Robert Penner.
Oh, there he is.
Yeah, Robert ran into Russell at the New York City labor action last night and helped him shoot some video, and so we're very excited to play that for you later on in the program. But we have a very fun show for you guys today. And so, thank you all for joining. Russell, aside from all the hectic editing that you were doing today, how goes the day?
That was my day.
Yeah, there's no aside from.
And there was, no, I haven't eaten. I have nothing. It was like broadcast news.
Yeah,
trying to get this ready in time. But the only reason for that, this would have been a very easy video to do if not for the complications of technology, of having to get everything into the cloud and then trying to get it into the drive. Like, that was the only reason it was such a nightmare.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad that you can do that, because you're getting to the point. I mean, you're Gen X, so you're just young enough to be able to do it.
Yeah.
If you were any older, you'd be, what is this? The cloud? It's not loading. The cloud. My father's like that. His videos upload to the cloud. He can't play them until hours after he shoots them either. So it's something. I don't know. You guys got to figure out how to work those.
It depends on how much you shoot. If you shoot that much footage, it's a nightmare. Like, some of the videos are in there.
All right, well, let's get started. Let's not piss off our Facebook viewers who are there. How do you expect people to pay attention through all this banter, right? Let's get started. Should we get started? Should we make everybody happy?
No. To piss them off, I'm going to have to make Wednesday 2. The final insult.
Yeah. Well, while the crowd is filing in here, we are going to start with the least significant story of the week, which is, of course, the Georgia election results. This is like Act 1, Scene 1 of a Shakespeare play, okay? Let me just give you guys a little, I know, at the risk of bantering too much. Back in the Shakespeare days, going to the theater was like going to a baseball game. So if you go to a baseball game, the first couple innings, most of the crowd is still filing in, right? Unless it's like a huge game, then everybody gets there early. Average day, midsummer, people are filing into the audience for the first couple innings of a baseball game. So back in Shakespeare's time, theater was the same way. So very, very rarely, I mean, he gave King Richard a big, juicy monologue at the opening of, what was it, Richard II or the Third, one of those. But almost always, he would start out with a milder scene because he wasn't expecting the whole audience to be there for the first scene. Right. Yeah. So that's what we do. We banter a little bit for 5 minutes while the audience files in. We don't want to lead right away with the stuff that nobody wants to miss, because then by the time they tune in, they miss it, right? So there's, to quote Shakespeare again,
for the muse of fire.
Well, I was going to say there's a method to my madness. I think the exact quote is, to my madness, there be method, right? That phrase, method to my madness, that comes from Shakespeare. So there's a method to our madness, folks. That's why we're starting out with a little banter, and it's why we're starting out with this utterly meaningless bullshit story called the Georgia Senate election results. So Raphael Warnock, of course, on Tuesday.
That really is like theater. Like, if you're doing a one-act festival, you put your weakest one first.
Exactly. You put the weakest one first. If you're doing a one-act play festival, anything, you always put, right. I mean, you don't want to lead with total garbage. You want to make a good first impression.
That's it. That's what's tricky about it, because you don't want to lose them But
Yeah.
you want to go out with your strongest thing.
Yeah, that's true. And you want to have the strongest one going into intermission and then the strongest one leaving. That's important.
Yep.
All right. So on Tuesday, Raphael Warnock defeated Ricky Ray Rector. I'm sorry. Did I say? I'm sorry. He defeated defeated Herschel Walker to become the first full-term black senator elect from Georgia. And this is not only a historic win for him in that sense, which, yay, but it's also historic in the sense that this is the first time, this midterms was the first midterms in 88 years where Democrats had the White House and held on to every single Senate seat that was in play. That has not happened in 88 years where a Democratic president has held every seat in the Senate during his midterm. So let's go, Brandon. We want to start by issuing a heartfelt congratulations to the best president of our lifetimes, Joseph R. Biden. Of course.
I mean, it's a good thing they've done such a great job. Otherwise, people might have voted against them.
Exactly. Well, that's what I was going to say. My pivot was that, obviously, in all seriousness, look, given how everything turned out, of course, there were caveats here because Republicans may have picked up a seat in New Hampshire, which they didn't. They may have lost a seat in Wisconsin, blah, blah, blah. We've done hours and hours of midterm coverage. We're not going to rehash all of that right now. Bottom line is, what it comes down to is all the Republicans needed to do to flip the Senate this year was hold Pennsylvania and flip Georgia. That's all they needed to do. Hold PA, flip Georgia. They entrusted with those responsibilities Dr. Oz and Herschel Walker, thanks to Donald Trump. Donald Trump tasked Oz and Walker, two absolute clowns, with the most important Senate races of the cycle. And that is very simply why Republicans not only did not take the Senate, they lost a seat in the Senate. So following this disaster, obviously, more Republicans came out of the woodwork to criticize Trump. So people are saying this is yet another nail in Trump's coffin. I'm just going to read a couple things here from the Huffington Post. His obsession.
One step closer to my personal fortune because I'm betting on DeSantis.
That's correct. Things are looking up. His obsession with the became an albatross and a real liability for people who are running, especially in swing states, said John Thune, Republican from South Dakota, the number 2 Senate Republican. The moral of that story is, again, that when people think about elections, they want candidates that come forward and talk about forward-looking positive agenda that hopefully inspires and appeals to their hopes and their aspirations. And in some states, at least, we didn't do a good job of that. I think candidates matter. I think we lost 2 or 3 or 4 races we didn't have to lose this year. That was Senator Roy Blunt on Wednesday. And then, in an unfortunate choice of words here, this was really bad writing, retiring Senator Pat Toomey offered a more blunt response. Now, why would you use the word blunt when the last guy's name was Blunt? If you're going to use that, at least mention
he's
the word.
He's got blunt on the brain.
Exactly. Blunt on the brain. Just one more data point in an overwhelming body of data that the Trump obsession is very bad for Republicans, Toomey said. This was the outgoing senator from PA, adding that normal Republicans did extremely well this year, which is, of course, true. And this is why we said in 2021 that Virginia governor's race was a real indicator of where the Republican Party needed to go, at least for this midterm cycle, which is play it down the middle, leave Trump out of it, hammer on how unpopular Joe Biden and his party are. Instead, they did not do that. So what's your take on this?
Yes, absolutely. But row your boat. Like, it's so much of it goes back to row that yes, these candidates were so out on the outer fringes that once row got thrown into the mix, that became one disadvantage too many. I still believe if the Supreme Court had not made that decision this year, you'd be looking at Senator Oz and Senator Walker. But because they were such piss poor candidates, you needed a perfect environment to push those meatballs over the finish line. And you had a far from perfect environment.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
What I find most interesting is how this puts Democrats back in the position of doing the rotating villain shuffle, because now they can't just excuse away everything on Manchin. Now Sinema is going to have to always join him, or they'll find another person to play the villain. Whenever they get in this position, they have to figure out new ways to play Lucy and the football with their hapless voters.
Well, sure thing. I mean, this will bring Sinema into Manchin's old role. If Manchin is off the board because they have 51, this puts Sinema in Manchin's shoes. And, for good measure, don't be surprised if a John Tester comes out of the woodwork.
Yeah, they got to get a third. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
And even that's not likely because the House is in GOP hands. So by the time a bill gets to the Senate,
nothing's going to come up.
Nothing's going to come across that they're going to need every Democrat vote. Like every bill that comes out of the House is going to be like Israel funding, which has broad bipartisan support anyway, right? The one more take I have on this is that Georgia is now officially a problem for the Republican Party. Yeah, right. And this started back in 2018, where they saw an opening in a blue wave year to perhaps push Stacey Abrams over the top against Brian Kemp. That did not work out, but she got close enough to the point where Democrats saw that if they can build a turnout machine in Atlanta, they could flip the state. And that's exactly what they did in 2020. They did it again in January 2021 for the runoff, and they did it again in 2022. Atlanta's a huge metropolitan area. It's a very, very big city and metro area, which means there are a lot of Democratic votes there. And I feel like in decades past, Democrats said, yeah, there's a lot of votes in Atlanta, but still the state's too red, so it's not really worth building an operation there. Once they saw that they could build an operation there and the rest of the state was close enough to win, they did just that. And if you looked at Warnock's margins on Tuesday night out of Fulton County and especially out of DeKalb County, where he ran up to score 90+%, if turnout in those areas is big, that puts Georgia in play. And this has now gone sideways for Republicans in 3 consecutive big moments. Right. I won't say 3 consecutive cycles because, of course, Kemp was elected again back in November. So it's not like Republicans can't win there. But this is now a state where Republicans have to execute. It's a problem for them. And executing means nominating someone who, not nominating a punch-drunk football star, tasking him with a pivotal Senate race.
Well, it's interesting. Everything kind of cycled back. The Mitt Romneys were poison in 2012 and 2016. And now they're in fashion again with the Republicans because they got a good look at the other side. Yeah, you go to the other side. It's I'll take your stinking N95 mask and wipe my ass with it, you peasants. Like, you know what? The old Mitt Romney kind of sweater wearing Republican. I'm down with that. I'm kind of for it.
Right.
Trump support is more apparent than real. I've been saying this for a very long time. He's got a really dedicated fan base, but nobody wants to take that ride again. If anything, Trump's presidency set back that movement. It set back right-wing populism in the Republican Party in the end. They might need to make some economic concessions, but stylistically, I think the MAGA thing is going to end up having been, from a historical perspective, pretty short-lived because it wasn't very successful. It's not as if it delivered for its voters. It's not as if its voters were like, well, I was about to lose the family farm before Donald Trump, and now we're sitting pretty. He didn't do anything for them. So what is there to keep them in that camp? How many times are you going to throw a brick through the window?
Yeah, I mean, if by throwing a brick through the window, if that's the main thrust of your point, I would say you're right. I still think a sort of economic nationalist agenda is very potent, and I think will become even more potent
it'll be with a
in short term. Well, that's the thing. It doesn't have to come in the form of a guy who's just incapable of executing, right? I mean, he is incapable of following a plan.
Right.
And this becomes evident at every turn. I mean, this is why his campaign announcement speech was such a snoozer and so forgettable because, and this happened in 2016, it happened in 2020 also. Whenever he tries to go on script and give the presidential speech, people think, oh, is he making a pivot? But then a week later, he's always doing something insane anyway, which just nullifies whatever calming effect that launch speech had. He gives that speech where he makes a point, obviously, to be very calm and very presidential and very cordial. He doesn't insult anybody. Then a week later, he's got fucking Kanye and Nick Fuentes at the White House. You know what I mean? Like a week later, he's already fucking up again. And so unless you can execute long term, these speeches where you try and be quote unquote presidential just play as boring and forgettable. They don't stick. And ultimately, the guy cannot execute a plan. And things in the country are such now that you have to be able to execute. They are going to have to put together a winning team for 2024. It's theirs for the taking. Democrats, highly unpopular. Just broad dissatisfaction with the state of the country is everywhere. They take that out on Joe Biden. So it's not like the Republicans can't win. The ball's in their court, right? Democrats are basically giving it to him. Looks like Biden's going to run again. They just moved South Carolina to the front of the primary schedule in order to make that easier. So if Biden runs again, that's the Democrats telling the GOP, here, it's yours. You just got to come take it. The question is, can they come take it?
That is why I think in the end, look, you went through this little phase where Republican voters, we talk a lot about the independence of the Republican voters because of Donald Trump. But historically, they've pretty much been like the Democrats. The party tells them Romney's the guy, they go for Romney. Difference is when they lost enough times with those kinds of candidates, they turned. The Democrats never turned. They turned and they said, no, fuck it. We're going to nominate Donald Trump. But that seems to have played itself out, particularly with these midterms, because they don't like to lose. They don't want to lose. And with these and you're right, a clown like Oz, a clown like Herschel Walker, that's what was so off-putting about it, because it's too Trumpy. An economic nationalist who is also a Glenn Youngkin type, that's the lane.
Right, exactly. And that's more or less what Ron DeSantis is, kind of. He's got slightly more edge than Youngkin, but not much. Not much. And look, you say that that's worn itself out. Well, in a sense, it's just the same thing. Like, the Trump candidates now have the same ick factor on them that the Romney candidates had on them, which is that they're fucking losers. They're losing. So now their base is going to respond to losing. Republicans don't like losing. And you notice these Republican senators didn't blame the Russians for losing. They didn't blame the people for losing. They all went out there and said, we have to do a better job next time, right? Because they're realistic about what it takes to win. All right. I think that's everything we have for that, is it not?
Yeah, I think that's it.
All right. Well, we do have a super chat here from Red Z saying he was always a protest vote, meaning Trump. No one got it. No, we got it. He was very much a protest vote to a lot of people. A lot of people took throwing a brick through the window over another Obama term in 2016, basically. So, yes, you are right about that.
I always say it was the snobs versus slobs movie for people.
Absolutely.
Right? We're just going to put this crude guy who drives all of the rich, straight people who have destroyed our lives nuts for the next 4 years.
Exactly.
But now things are a little too serious to vote on that basis. And yeah, now they're losers, right? They're losers.
Right.
They're losing, right? Ron DeSantis is winning. He put Disney in their place. He's a winner.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. All right, folks. Like I said, we put a lot of prep work into the show today. Russell drove himself crazy all day. The reason we can do this is because we have patrons supporting us, so we can take a few hours off work here and there to prep for these shows. So if you can go to patreon.com/DoDissidents, we would love you for it. Our patrons get a shout out every episode, at least once, more than likely 2 or 3 times. There they are at the bottom of the screen. They are the backbone of the show right now. The rest of you guys, I don't know. Do we have a sound drop for the rest of these guys, Russell? Can you cue that up before this scroll comes to an end? We don't want to say too much, but does he have it?
I think so. Yeah, I think it goes something like,
You cheap f***s!
Yeah, exactly. So let's get some, and of course, super chats work too. So thank you guys very much for the super chats. Thank you to Red Z for getting the party started with a super chat already. But like I said, these shows do take some prep. Russ put a lot of time in. So did I, actually, because I prepped all the other graphics and all the other exhibits and put together a nice outline. See, we got papers for this one. We got charts for this one. So, yes.
Got papers, charts, graphs, naked photos.
Exactly. Well, I hope
We've
Russell
got
was telling
revenge porn. We're doing a big revenge porn section.
I don't know if we're allowed to say that, actually. So you may
We're not allowed to say it?
I don't know. We may not be allowed to say that. I'm not sure. But it was a joke in case anybody minds.
Yeah,
Joke.
we don't
Just
do that.
joking. We don't do that. No, of course not. All right. So we have been covering the Twitter files quite a bit, and we were sort of waiting on the mainstream media to catch up. They were pretty silent on this. But as it turns out, both liberal media and independent progressive media, and I really hesitate to even divide them. I would say liberal media, both corporate and indie liberal media. It's all becoming liberal media at this point.
Pretty much.
How
much of the so-called left alternative media has not been apoplectic about Elon Musk? I just don't understand it. Like you're supposed to be outside of that bubble. Like, why are you? I'm not saying everyone should be an Elon Musk stan, but you don't see the hypocrisy here? Really? That all of a sudden now it's a problem? It wasn't a problem when Jack Dorsey ran it. Now it's a problem. It's amazing. I mean, I expected from the corporate media. I expected from the Young Turks, but you could really count on one hand people who are alternative media in the left space who are taking what I would consider a reasonable line on this.
Well, they're not just apoplectic about Elon Musk. They are indifferent to this Twitter files dump. You saw Majority Report downplay it. You saw TYT downplay it. David Dole, I haven't seen a segment on it, but he tweeted out something, about how irrelevant this is. So liberal media, both corporate and indie liberal media, have been downplaying the dump of these Twitter files. And the sort of disconnect between lib world and the rest of the world became very evident once the corporate media really chimed in and made their stance known about this. So we just have one exhibit here that I thought, well, we actually have, we have two exhibits, but one, the first one that we'll show was something that I thought really demonstrated this pretty well. We have here what is known to those who are new to the online world, which most of you are not. We have here a good old-fashioned ratio. Okay, so this is MSNBC published a blog post. The Twitter files that Elon Musk helped promote were supposed to be a smoking gun about Democratic election interference at Twitter. Instead, it was another massive flameout. Now, what we call a ratio in the business, folks, is when the replies greatly outnumber the likes and the retweets. So if people are commenting on a post more than they're liking it and sharing it, it means most of those comments are negative, and we call that a ratio. So this here is called a ratio because it has 2,621 comments to only 1,018 likes and only 544 shares. So let's see what this blog post is, shall we? Here we go. This is very short. I'm going to read the whole thing because it's very quick. Elon Musk's first Twitter manipulation effort, look at that headline, was a big flop by Jahan Jones. Over the weekend, conservatives, led by Elon Musk, tried to whip up right-wing fury and manufacture a political scandal after Musk had promised to share evidence of Twitter wickedly wielding its influence over U.S. elections. Ultimately, the proof fell far short of being the smoking gun that right-wingers had promised. Essentially, what we got from conservatives was just a Twitter regurgitation of the same conspiratorial claims that got then-President Donald Trump impeached back in 2019, that Democrats nefariously worked to suppress stories about unproven wrongdoing by Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's son, behavior that Trump and fellow Republicans baselessly allege the elder Biden worked to cover up as well. It's noteworthy that years into this right-wing conspiracy about the president's son, Republicans have presented no proof of its veracity. On the other hand, news reports and government probes have found foreign adversaries have helped spread claims about the Biden family in a seeming effort to sow division in U.S. politics, similar to Russia's strategy in 2016. With that in mind, it's understandable why reasonable people in charge of social networks, reasonable people in charge of social networks would be cautious, even hyper cautious about sharing something perceived to be potentially foreign sourced disinfo. Again,
you see, it's all reasonable.
Yeah.
It's all reasonable. Don't look at what this hand's doing. Look at what this hand is saying. Right.
Ultimately, that's all the author of the Twitter files, conservative Substack writer Matt Taibbi, which he is not conservative at all, so that's just a complete lie, was able to report from the scores of documents he supposedly received from Twitter employees. Yeah, just says he's conservative. That the company, which rightfully faced blowback for allowing disinformation on its platform during 2016, debated internally whether and how to prevent a story involving Hunter Biden from taking hold on the site in October 2020. Taibbi also seems to have revealed some personal email addresses after appearing to share the documents at Musk's direction. Okay, yeah, they're saying he doxed Jack Dorsey by accident. Unfortunately for GOPers, Taibbi blunted the explosiveness of his report, shared in a long conspiratorial Twitter thread. No, there was nothing conspiratorial about it. He just showed exhibits. He showed emails.
Showed exhibits, gave them context, explained them,
Yeah,
like reporting.
Like a journalist might do.
Like a journalist, right. Well, they've never met a journalist.
No. This is what passes for journalism on MSNBC, with a few admissions about his findings. For example, he admits that after poring through documents, he found no evidence that government officials had pressured Twitter to curb the spread of the story. This is one of my favorite claims of the libs, that because Trump was president in 2020, there was no government pressure on Twitter. We know that 50 intelligence officials signed a letter saying this was a Russian op.
Right.
That is government. Doesn't mean it has to come from the White House. When 50 intelligence, some active, some former, but 50 government intelligence people signed a letter saying, hey, this looks like a Russian plot. To act as if that is not pressure on Twitter is absurd. It's absurd. And that's been this go-to argument of theirs. Well, how can you say the government pressured them when Trump was still president? Nonsense. It was printed all over the place that 50 intelligence officials backed this bullshit, unfounded story that this was a Russian op. Beyond that...
Are you suggesting that MSNBC misleads its brain-dead viewership?
Well, it's not just them in this case. It's all these outlets. I mean, that's been a go-to talking point on indie media, too.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. But this is... MSNBC, it's the Fox News of that world. They just add a little extra over-the-topness to all of their coverage. This actually, they really went out of their way to take out the tone of, we are the reasonable arbiters, and aren't all those people who don't believe this stupid? Aren't they foolish? That's the whole lure of it. That's why, if you notice, people who like this stuff are the most insufferable creeps you'll ever meet, because it's the kind of people for whom that narrative really appeals. They always go right to who's smarter, who's more educated, who's more credentialed, who's more qualified. That's always their first go-to in an argument, right? In a debate. Absolutely. I actually saw a lib the other day. It literally unironically typed, yes, well, the masses think so-and-so, but the masses. Ellipse.
Right, as if they're not the masses.
They're not. They're above those people.
The masses who don't read MSNBC blogs, the masses who don't watch Joy Reid. All right, we're almost done. Beyond that, we also never get an explanation as to why Twitter, an independent company, should have been obligated to share a dubious story about the Biden family. This is not a point worth addressing. This is just on its face idiotic. We've addressed it a million times. We're not going to go down that road. Other than the fact Republicans wanted it to happen. Okay, nonsense for reasons that our viewers should know by now. If not, look it up. I'm not going to give myself a stroke explaining that again. In fact, Business Insider took a look at several tweets the Biden campaign asked Twitter to take down in 2020 and found they included nude images of Hunter Biden leaked to the internet without his permission. This revelation earned Musk some mockery, including from tech enthusiasts who've long followed his career. Only in a warped right-wing mind can refusal to post these images amount to a scandal. Okay, they latch on to the fact that there were a few lewd images of Hunter Biden that got blocked, which, of course, we would agree they should be blocked.
Yes.
But to act as if that was the bulk of the information is ridiculous. And the content in question here is very specific. It's the New York Post Hunter Biden laptop article. So they're obfuscating by putting these nudes out there as if that's the main thing that Republicans wanted out there. All right. From what I hear, Hunter Biden's fairly well endowed. And so, if anything, those dick pics may have helped his dad. Yeah, exactly. Because he had to get that from somewhere. Just saying. Only in a warped right-wing mind can refusal to post these images amount to a scandal. Quite ironic coming from the party of purportedly free enterprise, no? On one hand, Republicans claim businesses shouldn't be obligated to do humane things like serve gay customers. But on the other hand, they claim Twitter had an obligation to help share nudes belonging to Biden's son. Make it make sense. Well, I'm sorry, Jahan, I can't make that last paragraph make sense because it's just incredibly idiotic. Yeah. So I wish I could help you there, but I can't. I can help make sense of this story, though, more broadly, which is that Twitter baselessly intervened in the democratic process by baselessly claiming that a real story was fake. That's all the story is here. Now, I've heard a lot of libs and even some indie progressives say that there was nothing new in these drops. And they're right in the sense that reasonable people have known for a long time that Twitter was bullshitting about why they spiked that Hunter Biden laptop piece. So in that sense, you're right. There's nothing new there. What's new here, though, is the proof.
Proof.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and
that's kind of new.
That should shut you idiots the fuck up, but it doesn't because you're that dumb, right? So that's what's new. Unfortunately, it's not really new to you because nothing gets through to you because you're too dumb. You're too stupid.
Also, this entire argument, and I don't know why this angle isn't discussed more, the whole, these are private companies that can do what they want. Of course, that went right out the window as soon as Elon Musk took over. But that whole argument really doesn't hold any weight when you're talking about an industry that has been given a special provision in the law that does not hold them accountable in the way of newspapers and magazines for what they print. They're released from liability on the grounds that they have no editorial control. Now, once you start exerting editorial control, shouldn't you be open to lawsuits? Shouldn't the New York Post be able to sue you now? So, okay, you want to play the private business card, then okay, people should be able to sue you for making editorial decisions of that nature. This is one of the reasons they feel they can do that kind of thing with fiat. Right? They have it both ways. They're private companies, but they have special protections that they really, if you're going to do things like this, that undermines the spirit of that special protection. It's in complete violation of it.
Yeah. I mean, that's just one more way to debunk the whole private companies argument. And it's a way that we haven't done that often. So thanks for pointing that out. That is a good point. But MSNBC didn't stop there. We just read MSNBC in print form, but now we're going to really get the torture devices out, right? Now we're going to show you a clip of MSNBC. This is Brandy Zadrozny. Brandy Zadrozny appeared on Stephanie Rule. Now, her Wikipedia page, which she may have authored herself, for all we know, but it describes Brandy as, quote, an American investigative journalist and reporter with NBC News who specializes in political radicalization, extremism, and disinfo on the internet. That is a title that one only gives to themselves. What that really means is that they are a narrative manager. That's all that means. So this is an unoriginal, unintelligent, shit-lib narrative manager who blows the whistle whenever somebody expresses an opinion that she considers out of bounds. There's no specialist in political radicalization. It's nonsense. And if there was one, it certainly wouldn't be this person. So let's hear what she has to say here.
Ask you about what he did today. Elon Musk, he spent the majority of his day promoting a heavily criticized Twitter thread about
heavily
the
criticized by us
of Hunter Biden, a private citizen, someone who is obviously the son of President Biden, but who is not a government official. Can you explain this whole thing to us?
Sure. So background, in 2020, there was a New York Post story about Hunter Biden's laptop. When that came out, it was suggesting that somehow Hunter Biden, the president's son, was trading his closeness with the president to gain money and a position in Ukraine.
Somehow. I mean, how ridiculous is that? When I think Hunter Biden, I think this guy belongs on a foreign energy board.
Yeah. Oh, how absurd. How absurd to think such a thing.
Absurd that a crackhead got a seat on an energy board.
A crackhead who happens to be the son of the vice president with no clear qualifications for the job being paid an outrageous sum of money. And some of the emails that have been revealed strongly suggest that Poppy got a cut.
Right. Exactly. Somehow people have it in their head that this was improper.
Conspiracy theorists.
Yeah.
Now, we now know it was a really helpful thing, actually, the Twitter files today, because we got to see how content moderation works. We got to see how when a group of people with differing political ideas and ideologies and views gets together in the spirit of making a platform safe and healthy and right before an election.
Okay, there were no differing
One of them was my
views.
sorority sister.
Right. To the degree that they had a difference of opinion, it was, how do we get away with this? How do we justify this to keep our credibility intact? Those were the only differences of opinion there. Right. They all knew they had no basis for spiking the story, and they all knew that they were probably going to get a lot of shit for it. And so they were arguing, how do we get away with it? Those were the differences in opinion there.
Right when we knew, we had just learned of like the hack and leaks and WikiLeaks and all the stuff that did to hurt and to affect the 2016 election. In 2020, they were
okay. This is my favorite part of the clip. I'm sorry to keep pausing it, but we have to play this again because listen to the language here and watch how she corrects herself.
A platform safe and healthy, and right before an election. Right when we knew, we had just learned of like the hack and leaks and WikiLeaks and all the stuff that did to hurt and to affect the 2016 election.
To affect the 2016 election. The 2016 WikiLeaks were accurate information. No one disputes that. Her complaint is that information hurt the election. No, it didn't hurt the election. It hurt the Clinton campaign. Real information does not hurt the election process. It helps the election process because the more voters know, the better they can decide who they want to vote for. But not if you are trying to smuggle through customs the most vile, corrupt, untalented candidate in political history, Hillary Rodham Clinton. And that's who she wanted to win. And so this information, this leak, hurt the election. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I say hurt the election? I meant affect the election. Right. Yes, information affects elections. You dumb. Almost said something I would have regretted. Information affects elections. That's called democracy. That's called the process. It doesn't hurt the election. It affects the election. Information is supposed to affect elections.
Right. Well, it's funny because it's hard to lie all the time. You're going to slip. So that's a moment where she slipped and she caught the slip.
She caught it.
Effect. I mean, effect. I don't have a bias. I'm a neutral arbiter.
Right. If that was fake, like fake information hurts an election, yes, sure, we all agree with that. But it wasn't fake. The 2016 leaks, no one disputes, were real.
In 2020, they were heightened, right? People were trying to do the right thing inside Twitter. And it looked, this weird story of a laptop left in some like repair shop, it looked like a hack and leak. That's
no,
what
it didn't.
People
it looked like a
Twitter
crackhead left his laptop at a
so
repair
they
shop.
acted a little fast. And we heard that from Yoel Roth, the former head of Trust and Safety, 2 days ago on Kara Swisher's podcast. He said that. He didn't agree with the idea. The day after it happened, Jack came out and said, I didn't agree with what happened. That happened too quickly. Because content moderation is a human activity. It's stuff that we do as humans to, fulfill the North Star of whatever organization we have.
There we go. Thanks to Newsbusters for finding that clip. Russell, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know why she bothered to try to pretend to think otherwise. That they decided really after the election of Donald Trump. They always kind of believed this, but now they parade it out in the open. They don't believe that the public has a right to form its own opinion. They fundamentally don't believe in the public's right to information. And it doesn't even occur to them that Donald Trump is not de facto evidence that the public does not have a right to form its own opinion. That's a baseline assumption.
Yes.
It would never occur to them that is democracy at work.
Yes,
right.
That's exactly
democracy failing.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what I said last time, is that the liberal class cannot reconcile their superficial allegiance to the democratic process with their utter contempt and hatred for a democratic outcome that they don't like, right? Once democracy yields a bad outcome, they're like, oh, well, let's see. How do we pretend we believe in this while at the same time trying to manipulate it to get the outcome we want?
Well, and they have a deep hatred for the public. The conservatives are not wrong when they say that. When they say it, like, what do you think your contempt for the average American is not showing? That's not a right-wing conspiracy. You wear it on your sleeve. Your entire premise that Donald Trump's election was wrong demonstrates a contempt for the public. You have a contempt for voters. You have a contempt for voters who don't vote the way that you would vote. Now, in the end, it is a class kind of a contempt. It's not acceptable in this day and age to speak badly about non-white people. So you've put it all onto poor whites. You make that the reason, right? And then you tie it to all these hot buzzwords, white supremacy. One of our somebody in the chat, Gene, actually caught it. I've noticed this too, that healthy, once in a while, a word becomes a meme. Meant to suggest much broader connotations. Healthy has become that for libs. They use healthy in a lot of different contexts to suggest something that absolutely cannot be argued with or refuted. Right? We're keeping our community safe and healthy. It has a much broader meaning than just the simple dictionary meaning of that word.
Right. All right. Is that everything? Oh, we got another super chat here from Red Z coming through again. Where's everybody else? Red Z's coming through. Red Z stepping up. Are you surprised of the disregard of credibility? I take that question as, am I surprised by just how shameless they are? No, of course. They don't need to maintain credibility. They already have it with an audience. They've curated an audience of automatons. They've curated an audience of people who will not question them no matter what they say. So they don't have to maintain any sort of credibility. They just have to give the audience what they know the audience wants to hear. That's the business model of corporate media, right? And it's really the business model of independent media too. What is TYT now? It's the same thing. They tell the audience what they want.
He's wearing that beanie, to contain his thoughts. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's not putting on a show.
All right, let's get to our third segment, because this is one we're really excited for. This is one where we did some on the ground reporting. And we're really excited to share it with you. I'm excited to see this footage because of the technical issues we've had. Russell edited this together. I have not seen what you're about to play. So, Russell, quarterback this segment. Why don't you set up what we're going to see, talk about the rally last night in New York City.
Okay, so this was a rally in support of the railroad workers held appropriately enough at Grand Central Terminal. So you had workers from the CSA, from the teachers union, from the Grand Central Station engineers themselves showed up. It was very interesting because it was really being driven by people, a lot of people who have been in the trenches, not recently, not Johnny come latelys, people who have been in the trenches of the labor movement for decades, real working class leaders of a kind that used to have very prominent roles in the Democratic Party. Any Democratic convention at one time, up through the 70s, really, would have had a lot of guys like this speaking at the convention. Yeah, I'm John from the Society, the Brotherhood of Engineers of the. You would have had a lot of guys like that at the old time Democratic conventions. And starting with Clinton, they really, not starting with Clinton, it started before that, but Clinton with NAFTA, that was the coup de grace. They really pushed people like this to the fringes of politics. So it's very rare you're in the presence, and certainly the media doesn't cover people like this. These very intelligent, articulate, working class people who are very well informed in the labor struggle, its history, and are right out there on the front lines of it. And there were a lot of people out there, and the rhetoric was a lot more inflammatory than what you're going to see on MSNBC.
All right, well, let's take a look. Before we do, we want to thank our fan, friend, and patron, Robert Penner, for helping us get this footage. Robert ran into Russell in the crowd and helped him out. So thank you so much for your help with this. We really, really appreciate it. Here we go. Let's take a look.
My name is Ike Naham. I'm a retired locomotive engineer for Amtrak. I also worked a few years in the freight industry, altogether 30 years in the railroad industry. And I'm here to show solidarity with my sisters and brothers in the railroad industry who face conditions today that are even worse than the conditions that I faced in terms of extra boards and being on call and all of these things that have come out in this latest battle with the rail carriers.
Sick days are human right. Sick days are human right. Suggest to the railroad workers as to what it is that they can do to alleviate their. See my brothers from the airlines? If we had a general strike, you know they're not flying. You know American ain't flying. United ain't flying. Because all of them is catching hell. They don't have a worker in America today that's not catching hell. And that we have a government, and let me tell you something, it's a flip-flap. That's the reason why they separated the two bills. The one bill sends them back to work. The other bill contains the sick days. Because they knew the sick days were going to fail. It's a flim-flam. And when you recognize you've been a part of a flim-flam, then you got to do something. And these workers need to take things into their own hands.
Amtrak Joe loyally was a loyal servant of the DuPont dynasty while he spent 36 years in the U.S. Senate. He also served the MasterCard sharks. We don't have to tolerate a railroad baron like Warren Buffett, who sits on a $109 billion fortune, whose hedge fund, Berkshire Hathaway, owns the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad, lock, stock, and barrel.
Sick days are human right. Sick days are human right.
We have to stop trusting in the Democratic Party. How many times do we have to be screwed by these people? And our leaders say, oh, wait,
White
don't
supremacists.
negotiate yet. We have to get the Democrats in before we negotiate.
You need to get out of the pocket of the Democratic Party. When you get out of their pocket, then you'll be with the militants, with rank and file workers. And what you'll do is start fighting the class struggle. And you're going to get a lot more done for workers doing that than being tied to the Democratic Party. Now understand, we are essential. Amazon, Starbucks,
It's a disgrace for legislation not to be enacted against the bosses that don't come to the table when you have a workforce that say we want to be unionized.
You know, the great Malcolm X used to say that the difference between the Democrats and the Republicans is that the Republicans would stick the knife in your back 6 inches and the Democrats would pull it out too. With this settlement, the Democrats and the Republicans stuck the knife in 9 inches and didn't pull it out at all. I'm probably going over my time limit. This is very inspiring to see everybody out here together, united across craft lines. That's what the Railroad Workers United stands for. Let's break down these horrible reactionary craft divisions. Let's unite in one big industrial union on the railroad.
We support everybody, from the Amazon workers to Starbucks and everybody in between. We understand that unionism, solidarity is the only way that we're going to be able to make it as Americans in this country. That's it. That's it. And if we don't have that, you're on the outside looking in.
Especially that we are. Now we have this here sister from UFT.
Democratic Party screws workers. Sign there.
So we have Emma from UFT. She's in the house with us. Emma.
But we need our movement to fight for more than that too. To fight saying that Black Lives Matter. To fight saying that trans lives matter. We've seen around the world and around the country, oh my gosh, around the country, the striking education workers in California right now. Solidarity with them. The striking workers, the striking workers in Iran. Solidarity with them. All right, thank you so much. I think my time's over.
Hold on, let's just stop it right there because Russell wanted to mention this. Well, let's just pause it right there because go ahead.
Okay, for one thing, there's a great speaker who we're trying to get on the show. I don't know what happened. I was doing this edit like literally it was like broadcast news, like dropping the disc into the thing right before we went on the air.
We will get to the rest of this. We're just going to take a game break.
No. There's a clip that's missing. I must have done something when I was trying to drop it in at the end.
Well, it's not over. As I said, we have more footage to play. We're going to get back.
Yeah, but it should have been earlier. We'll see. Okay. We'll see. Maybe it's in there. Maybe I put it in the wrong spot. Okay. So all night long, as you could see, you're having these old school labor unionists, right? And then as soon as you get like the young white teachers union, all of the woke stuff starts to come out, and you could see, look, most of these speakers were African American. Not one of them started getting into Black Lives Matter. Not
you
one
can
of them.
They start kind of wave her off a little bit when she gets into
No, he literally shut her down when she started doing
this,
because they're trying to build a multi-ethnic, multi-identity, class-based economic movement. They're not interested as labor organizers who want to win in leading with that. They talked about racism. There was some conversation, but they always tied it to an incident. This happened to these workers at this plant, right? They did not come out and start doing these divisive slogans.
Right. I'm Kendra from the International Sisterhood of Cisgender White Allies.
That's it. They weren't with that. And you know what? This again, like the formats came out very. So
that's because it was mixed media. I mean, there's nothing.
Yeah, I had a shot of the airline pilots, and look, man, they look like airline pilots. They're wearing the jackets, the hats, and these guys were white as milk. So they're out there supporting that. And look, there were trans people there too, and they were perfectly welcome. But when you start to look, there are probably Republicans there. There are probably people who have conservative leanings on social issues. Look, man, as long as they're going to stand shoulder to shoulder and fight for that wage, this is what a lot of the identitarians don't understand, because most people who are attracted to that philosophy, they're pretty well fixed financially. They're not in a
Right.
position that they really have to work through how do you ally with people you might not agree with on
Exactly.
everything. So as soon as this girl from this younger generation who's coming out of the teachers union, she's not coming out of the mechanics, she's not coming out of the engineers. As soon as they put somebody like that up there, out comes the identity politics, and not one of these African-American speakers said the words Black Lives Matter. Not one, right?
Yeah, and once again,
they said it by being there. They said
Right,
it
exactly.
through their actions. They don't
Yeah.
need to say it in this platitude-oriented way that's divisive and can rub certain people the wrong way. There's just no reason to do that.
Right. Yeah, that's more or less what I was going to say. It's not that there's anything wrong with the sentiment. Obviously, we support BLM. We were very supportive of BLM through the George Floyd protests and everything.
Of
but
course.
you have to center certain things at a labor action, which is what this was. All right, let's watch the rest of this. All right, now they go into Grand Central Terminal. Strikebreaker Joe, they're chanting. Or railroad workers, yes. Strikebreakers, no. I'm sorry. That's what they're chanting. I thought they were chanting Strikebreaker Joe. I thought they were stealing our song.
Strikebreakers, no! Railroad workers, yes! Strikebreakers, no! Railroad workers, yes! Sick days, no! Sick days are human rights! Human rights! Sick days are 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 human rights!
The beautiful grand concourse of Grand Central Terminal.
Sick days are human rights! Sick days are human rights!
All right, so there you have it. Excellent job, Russell and Robert. I know, Russell, you're probably looking at that and thinking, oh, what a mess. But it was mixed media editing with less than a day turnaround, so I think it came out pretty damn good.
Like I said, man, it was really the difficulty of uploading it to the cloud that caused most of the trouble. But yeah, no, it was very inspiring. It was very fiery. There were a lot of people there. It was very interesting hearing that kind of rhetoric coming out of these workers, because more than one really was advocating that they do a wildcat strike. And not only that, that the airline workers join in and that everybody just shut down the country.
Of course. Yeah, I'm going to admit Ellen, our patron, she has her mic on. Thank you, Ellen, for calling in. What's your what's your reaction to that?
Well, first of all, I'm really appreciative that y'all got this, and to your friend who showed up to video it.
Well, he's a patron, and so are you, and you guys are who allow us to do that. So thank you for giving us the time that we need to do that. No, we're serious. Like we can't do this project in a way that eats into work hours. You know, Russell and I are not independently wealthy. So the more patrons sign up, the more we can do that kind of stuff. It really is a big help. So Ellen, thank you. And thanks, Robert, obviously, for being there. So there's my plug. Sorry, Ellen, go ahead.
Oh, no. If you want me to keep going.
No, of course. Yes.
Okay. So I just, I'm so frustrated. And it's just like, I watch this and I'm almost on the verge of tears.
That's what Robert texted me last night. He messaged me the same thing from the rally. Yeah.
Y'all are, well, y'all are in New York. And this is in New York City, where I suppose you have more of a variety of opinion among Democrats as to how things should be going. I'm in North Alabama.
It's shit lib central over here, Ellen.
Is it?
LA and New York are the home of the shit libs.
Well,
it's like
I don't know.
like what Chicago is to deep dish pizza, New York is to shit libs.
Grand Central Station sees hundreds of thousands of people a day, most of whom are affluent white collar commuters who vote Democrat, but probably ignored that rally that was going through there at the time. Would be my guess.
What's been going through my head, though, is that I've been discussing for several hours today on Facebook with people. And again, almost everyone who's a Facebook friend or a follower there is a Democrat. Not all are white, but the majority are. And so we've been talking about Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker today. And I've asked one thing, can you please not say at least Warnock is not Walker? Can we please talk about who this man is?
Right.
And it's the insouciance. It is the insouciance with which the Democrats that I know, that I'm in communication with, that I love dearly, some of them are really good personal friends, but it's this insouciance, whether it's the railroad workers, whether it's immigration, whether it's Medicare for all, it's the insouciance with which they can just dismiss.
Well, they don't care. I mean, Russell
really
said this over and over again. These people have no real politics. People who could absorb what the MSNBC clip that we just played earlier and just take that in as fact and real news and real sort of somber, level-headed, perspective. I mean, come on. That's why the right wing calls them NPCs, non-player characters. They describe them exactly right. These are just empty vessels for whatever propaganda they're absorbing at the time. Don't mean to insult your friends, obviously, but I have friends like that too.
My friends, my relatives.
That's
your clip there just perfectly encapsulated that. You've got, if what I saw was representative of what actually happened, you've got primarily African Americans saying sick leave is a human right, I think is what they were saying. And you get this adorable little white girl at the end coming on with this, like I said, my favorite word for the moment is insouciance. I don't even know what to say.
Well, that is a good word. I'll give you that. You got to start using that word.
Well, I mean, I kept that in because you see the organizer comes and takes the mic from her.
No, it's important to see. It really is, because it's a good lesson. It's a good lesson in that.
Quiet.
So you're talking Black Lives Matter, but here's an actual black person. It's like, shut up with that shit. Come on, man.
Right.
We're trying to create solidarity here. We're trying to bring everybody. No, like I said, there were trans people in the crowd. They were perfectly welcome. They were supporting, the thing. But you don't need to get into that shit. That's not what you're there for. That's not the purpose of this rally. That's not what this rally is about. And this is the thing that people like that have a really, really hard time with. Hey,
and
man.
So
what will you not work with people who think that, transgenderism is a mental illness?
Yeah.
Will you not rally with that? Right. Because now you're already on your back heel because you're fighting all the money and all the power. You want to alienate those people because a lot of the working class have rather conservative opinions about that. And don't start getting into the whole white people thing, because if you've ever talked to working class African Americans, working class Latinos, working class Asians, most of them are not big on the unitary bathroom theory. Most of them are not.
Right.
So are you gonna excommunicate all of them? That's why you see this guy who probably does have very left-wing views on those things, but not in that. He doesn't want anybody broadcasting that because he wants to keep everybody together on a common mission.
Right, and the more you're together on a
situation.
common mission, the more likely it is that eventually people who do
That's
have
another good
anti-trans
point.
views will come around. Say, hey, you know what? I've been in the trenches with this trans person for years.
Right.
You know, there's
Right.
nothing wrong with these guys at all. You
Right.
know what I mean? Or these theys at all. Sorry.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with these theys.
That's how a lot of that actually does get
Exactly.
ameliorated. You know, there was a great quote. I wish I could find the article. They were interviewing a veteran of the gay rights movement, and he said, do you know where we'd be as a gay movement if we had written off every person who didn't agree with us and refused to engage with them? Do you know where we'd be? Yeah, man. How do you think you're going to break that down? You can't break it down by being censorious. You just generate a backlash. You break it down by putting those people in a battle together. Right?
Absolutely.
Like that's how. Look at what Tulsi Gabbard said. She had her father's views. He's a very conservative Hindu, and she had his views until she served in the military, and she served alongside LGBTQ people, and that's what changed her mind. Now, what if you had said you can't serve? Right? She
Exactly.
lived the rest of her life thinking that way.
Absolutely. All right, Ellen. Well, thank you so much for the call. We got a couple more segments to get to. I'll remove you for now, but like I said, if you want to turn your mic on at any point,
Thank
just
you.
please do so. Thanks, Ellen.
All right, we have a super chat.
We do. All right, let's catch that super chat. If compromising regarding what I guess anti-war left platform, could you two accept removing Federal Workers Union, not USPS, FedLaw, or Layman RR Railroad? I'm not sure what you mean by removing.
Yeah,
Federal
I don't know
Workers Union.
What do you mean? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, if you could clarify with another $5, that'd be great.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
Well, we'll make the rest of the show about it if you throw down 100.
Exactly. But no, I mean, look, generally, no. I mean, if you mean, would we undermine any union power? The answer is no, I wouldn't. No, I mean, that is essential, as the rest of our show will be devoted to. But we have a nice segue into this sort of anti-Democrat, anti-squad railroad rally and our final segment, which is, I don't know if you knew, there's another labor action going on, a more hilarious, a more hysterical labor action going on at the New York Times. The New York Times newsroom is apparently on a 24-hour strike. And Jamal Bowman, a Democrat in good standing, squad member or not, he made a video. Now, this is the guy, by the way, who promised to vote no on overriding the workers for a bill that included no sick days, and then did the exact thing he promised he wouldn't do. He is one of the many, many squad members, in fact, all squad members except Rashida Tlaib, who
you know what?
the rail workers.
I was very rushed, so I'm pretty sure I got footage of that. One of the speakers started yelling out because the DSA was there.
Oh,
and
yeah.
One of the speakers actually said, the whole squad voted for this. Now, is DSA going to disown them? Are you going to write them off? It was an interesting moment.
Oh, trust me, we're getting to that. We got a whole segment on that.
I know.
But
I'm just saying that did come up at the rally.
At the rally. Okay.
Like, one of the speakers literally confronted the DSA members at the rally about it.
Yeah, well, as they should have. Bowman decided after voting to break the railroad workers' strike, he tweeted out a video in support of the New York Times newsroom, i.e., propagandists for his party. He supports their labor action. So let's hear him talk about the urgency of supporting what is the ultimate shit-lib strike. It's a 24-hour New York Times newsroom strike. Let's hear Jamal Bowman on the fierce urgency of now. Oh, I'm sorry, that's not Bowman. That's Jeffries, right? Yeah. But let's hear Mr. Jamal Bowman, pardon me, on supporting this hysterically funny labor action by the New York Times newsroom.
Peace and love, everyone. Tonight at midnight, 1,100 journalists from the New York Times are going to be going on a 24-hour strike. Do not cross the digital picket line. Let us stand in solidarity with our brothers and sisters who are walking off the job in protest to make sure they earn the wages they deserve. Let us not cross the digital picket line. Let's stand with them and tell your friends, do not consume their news from the New York Times tomorrow. We'll get it from
or the
somewhere
next
else.
day.
Let's stand with our brothers and sisters.
No, not
in
the next
labor.
day, just
Peace
tomorrow.
and love.
Not tomorrow.
I'm suggesting that's a good general policy.
Just make it a habit. Don't consume their
just
news
keep,
at all.
Why limit it to one day?
All right, now the punchlines here write themselves, but I am going to show you a couple of actual tweets that are meant to be taken seriously in support of this 24-hour New York Times newsroom strike, okay? Here. You are all queen bees in our hearts, but we are sick of management's games. Stand with us on the digital picket line. This person, Art Life, actually tweets out, no Wordle or spelling bee for me today. I stand in solidarity with the Guild. Literally, they're not doing Wordle today. That's their act of solidarity with the New York Times newsroom. No consumption of New York Times. Here's another actual tweet meant to be taken seriously. The New York Times is on a 24-hour strike. Do not cross the digital picket line. Do not listen to The Daily. That's their fucking bullshit podcast. Use Wordle or visit the New York Times website. Do not cross the digital picket line.
Sounds like they mean business.
Well, this begs the question, Russell. Shall we?
Which question is that? I'm not.
Well, I think we shall. What do you think? Do you know what I'm getting at? I didn't put this in here.
No. What shall we do?
We shall, right here, in real time, for all to see, cross the digital picket line. Let's play Wordle, shall we? Right on the air. Let's go. My favorite Wordle start is stare. It has all the common letters.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we got R-E.
If the workers have to play Foodle, the Times people are going to play Wordle.
We're crossing that picket line. Fuck Jamal Bowman, fuck the squad, and fuck the New York Times newsroom. We're playing some Wordle. All right, what's our next play?
because you couldn't find a more unsympathetic bunch of creeps than the New York Times. Like the New York Times has managed the impossible. They've engineered a strike that the workers will be against.
Right. Yeah. See, sometimes I do this thing where I'll use words that I know are wrong just to.
I mean, I've never played this. I don't even know.
Oh, you don't even know the game?
No, I don't even know what it is. No.
All right, guys, what should our next play be?
Yeah, take it from the chat.
Let's say, okay, yeah, what should chat?
Let them play.
Let's go. We're crossing the picket line. We're scabs. We're digital scabs here in defiance of Jamal Bowman.
Yeah, because you guys were so.
All right, Robert says creep. Let's try creep. No.
The New York Times was so supportive of the railroad workers. So supportive. Like, how can we cross the picket line like this?
Diner?
Pious. Axel S. Pious.
Oh, but it has an I-N. I-N. Oh, I got it. Boom. Oh, the last one. Well, right before the buzzer. Infer. Look at that. All right, everybody.
We are now officially. We are, when people ask us, are we pro labor? We're going to say except for the New York Times.
Except for the New York Times. It would have been embarrassing if we didn't
look,
get the Wordle.
if it were the guys in, like, the printers or something, we'd support that.
Yeah. I mean, the inanity of these people. Do not listen to the Daily.
Right.
Do not use Wordle. Do not use Wordle.
Times are hard.
In solidarity with the newsroom, Wordle. Do not use Wordle. What a fucking joke these people are. God damn. Yeah, Mika, scabs. That would have been a good word of the day. Scabs. That would have been. I think union, right? Union is 5 letters. U-N-I-O-N. Yeah, that would have been something. Labor. L-A-B. Yeah, labor is 5 letters too. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm glad we were able to do that. But yeah, what a joke. I mean, how fucking hilarious.
We literally we could not have picked a more disrespectful gesture towards the New York Times than to literally break their strike on the show.
On the show.
and have all of our viewers participate.
Chime in. Yes.
We have all stuck the knife in the New York Times' back and not taken it out.
See, we're trying to be more professional about this, folks. We're typing up outlines and sharing them with each other, but I deliberately held that one from Russell because I wanted to surprise him. I thought he would get a kick out of that.
You did surprise him.
So I kept that one in my little pocket here.
As a good improv partner, I was like, well, hang on. Is he talking about a sound drop? Like, so I just fell back on Second City rules, like say yes.
Say yes. Yeah, whatever.
Say yes. Whatever he's talking about, just say yes.
All right. Well, we have one last segment that we have to get to, but I believe Red Z did clarify with another $5. Thank you, Red Z. Really coming through today. Thank you. I appreciate it. Do they need a union? They bargain with themselves. I'm fine on unions, but federal government is too corrupt. Give you Medicare for all. I'm all anti-corruption. So does who need a union? Do federal workers need a union? Is that what you're talking about? Like the Postal Service? I assume that's what you're talking about.
I mean, I know some postal workers. They need a union.
Yeah, I mean, I think they do need a union, yes. Federal government is too corrupt. Well, look, I mean, what a union is, well, sure, but that's part of why you need unions, right? I mean, that's part of why you need the unions. A union is a collection of workers, right? So, like, UPS has a union. The UPS workers negotiate contract terms with UPS. And there are enough UPS workers to the point where UPS can't screw them too hard, because if they do, they will strike. They'll walk out. So that's all a union is. It is literally a collection of workers leveraging the power that their labor has within the organization against management to get the best deal for themselves. So yeah, I mean, I think they need unions all over the place. Now that's not to say that every union operates in good faith every time. Like, I think the teachers union, makes some demands that I think are over the top. I mean, I don't think you should not be able to fire a lousy teacher. I think there should be a process for that, but they shouldn't just be untouchable. You have teachers who are literally unfireable, who stay around teaching 20 years past when they can do it. I had a 9th grade biology teacher who was 1 foot in the grave. Literally, this person had no business driving a car, much less teaching children how to learn. I mean, she couldn't do the job. So, that's not to say every demand of every union is something I would endorse. But yes, I think you need collections of workers. You need workers to have collective bargaining powers in as many realms as possible. Yes.
Except the New York Times.
Except
okay. See, there's the thing. It's just because they are literally directly responsible for shaping what's essentially an anti-union narrative in the country. That is why there's a New York Times carve out here.
Yeah.
If they were doing the Lord's work, we'd be for it.
I mean, it's just incredible. Jamal Bowman, right after
you reap what you sow.
Right after he just outright lies and promises not to vote to break up the railroad worker strike with terms that are unfavorable to them, he goes ahead and does it. And then a few days later, he's out here tweeting out solidarity with the New York Times newsroom who do our propaganda. Like, yeah, we are sticking up for the people who print our talking points and present them as news. They're having not even a real strike, a 24-hour photo op bullshit strike. And yeah, don't do Wordle tomorrow. Really important. Don't do the Wordle tomorrow. What a fucking joke. What a joke.
I mean, that says it all.
What an embarrassment.
That really tells you how out of touch they are. They live in a world where that's not absurd.
Exactly. Just fucking absurd. And the Wordle thing was literally a joke that I thought of. I was going to say, oh, does that mean don't do the Wordle today? But no, these people actually tweet that out. Seriously, don't do the Wordle. Extraordinary. Truly extraordinary. All right, we have a real barn burner for our last segment here. Brianna Joy Gray hosted Seattle City Councilwoman Kshama Sawant on her podcast and Ryan Grimm to debate the role of the squad in crushing this labor action. And the reason why Kshama was invited is, of course, because she is a just total badass socialist alternative member who holds down her seat on the Seattle City Council. She also put out a really wonderful article on the Socialist Alternative site. I'm going to read briefly from it, and then we are going to cut to some of that debate between Kshama Sawant and Ryan Grimm, which I can only describe as a rhetorical curb stomp. All right? It is fantastic. It is fantastic. She is so kick-ass. I love Kshama Sawant. But here, this is the bottom line. On November 30th, Democratic Socialists of America posted a statement of support for the rail workers, which included this sentence. Any member of Congress who votes yes on the tentative agreement is siding with billionaires and forcing a contract on rail workers that does not address their most pressing demand for paid sick days. What then of their own members and endorsed elected officials in Congress who voted yes? Like I said, most of the squad members are DSA members, and all but Rashida Tlaib voted for the bill that did not include paid sick leave. So that's what she's talking about here. What this statement implies, and what the actions of the squad definitely prove, is that these elected officials are and see themselves as part of the capitalist state, the state that acts for the billionaires, sorry, I lost my spot, and against the interests of the majority, the working class. Big bold letters, simple as this: a socialist cannot be a strikebreaker. This needs to be the end of any pretense by DSA that the squad is socialist, and should result in their expulsion from the organization. Failing that, the squad's betrayal of the working class becomes DSA's betrayal. The danger inherent in this sellout, beyond the obvious quality of life damage to rail workers themselves, is that it will drive working people into the arms of the right wing, who can posture as the working class political alternative to the Democrats. The task of building a left-wing working class alternative to the progressive politics of the big business Democratic Party has never been more urgent than it is today. Amen. Now, we're going to play sound from this because Brianna didn't drop video of this debate until 2 o'clock, so it wasn't long enough to give us time to clip video. There's a lot of sound to play here. I tried editing it down. I listened to this 4 times over thinking, where can I make cuts? And I just decided we have to play it
let it rip,
because it's that good. So it's about 9 minutes of sound. We'll interrupt at various points, but this is so worth it. So this is, I mean, you've all heard these people many, many times. You can tell the voices apart. This is Brianna Joy Gray, Ryan Grimm, and Kshama Sawant.
Of Pramila Jayapal's wrangling was the whole point of Pramila Jayapal's wrangling was that the TA and the sick days could not leave the House independently. They were going to leave together, and they had the vote for the TA. This is the progressives' whole point, is that they had the vote for the TA anyway, so I might as well have voted for the sick days. But you can flip that. You can say they had the vote for the sick days anyway, so why would I have voted for the TA? Exactly. And every argument could have been made about why it's horrible for the.
By the way, TA means tentative agreement, which is the agreement without paid sick days. So just like in Build Back Better, what the House did was they split the agreement into 2. They passed the agreement without the sick days, and then they passed an amendment to the TA with the sick days. The squad should have voted no. First of all, they shouldn't have split the thing in the first place. This is a new thing they do now, where they split bills. Oh, we're going to pass the good version and the bad version, and hope that the good version passes the Senate, which will make the bad version better. Imagine they did that with like the fucking, Civil Rights Act. Well, we're passing 2 Civil Rights Acts, a good and a bad. And yeah, the good's not likely to pass.
We're gonna have the voting rights part here.
Right. We hope we can pass both, but we'll pass the bad one anyway. We're gonna have the
Jim Crow laws in this one.
Right.
And so if you want to vote against lunch counter segregation, you vote for the other bill.
Right. Exactly. Imagine how convoluted that would be. So the point here is that they shouldn't have split the bills in the first place. And if they did, the squad should have voted no on the bad terms, because the bad terms bill is a strikebreaker bill. That's the underlying point here. Okay, so now that we have that exposition out of the way, apologies for those who didn't know that already. Let's play this.
The Senate not to have been able to pass the sick days, and how progressive, at the same time that progressives actually demonstrated through their votes and their commitments and their articulated disagreements with the Biden administration strategy, that Biden was throwing workers under the bus. However, by voting for Biden's strategy, it neutered their ability to do so, did it not?
No. So look, if they had done what you said, like vote no, and then they vote yes, wouldn't their critics be saying, oh, that was just a performative no vote, and they still voted for the sick leave, which then is a fig leaf that covers this thing that then allows it to get over the Senate, and then the Senate takes it out.
No,
So,
nobody's saying that about.
No, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Brianna. This is a complete straw man argument that has no basis in reality. If socialists and progressive had voted only for a bill with paid sick leave, who in their right mind, who's on the side of the railroad workers, would be blaming them for that? This is complete nonsense. And it's really just a way to, again,
wait a minute.
Away from the reality that nobody in their right mind, Ryan, maybe despite being a political analyst, you thought that the Senate, there was any chance of the Senate voting yes on a paid sick leave bill. But as Brianna, you were saying, workers in their right mind understood that there was zero chance of this passing in the Senate. So what they actually did is what's performative, which is where they gave cover to the Biden administration and to the Republicans to break the strike.
Exactly. Bingo. Just want to break down what she said. What the squad did was performative because it gave cover to Joe Biden to give him the cover to say, hey, I tried to get you sick leave. So what they did was performative. It was performative on behalf of the Biden White House.
Right.
Exactly.
They went along with the White House's PR strategy.
Right. And Ryan Grimm saying, well, if they voted no, that would have been the performative action. Well, how twisted is that?
To sell out the workers. And yes, Biden did betray, and the betrayal began with the Biden administration. There is no question about that. But it is commentators like yourself who will then, any moment, whoever among the Democratic Party is in the crossfire of workers, justifiably, then those people are going to be protected. So when the fire was against workers were angry against AOC and Jayapal, then suddenly AOC starts tweeting, and then, you all start defending her by saying, oh, well, the unions wanted it. But as I was clarifying before you came, it wasn't union rank and file. And I don't know which rank and file you spoke to, but it is just complete nonsense to say that railroad workers who are just struggling for their basic survival were somehow going to be accepting this. The reality is, again, we have to keep in mind that ultimately, when it came down to the vote, it was a very hollow situation. There was no real strategy out for the workers. So we have to keep bringing it back to the more basic question about, what is it really that allows workers to win some victories? It is actually by going on strike and having a fighting strategy. So none of this is going to provide a solution. And we on the left, I'm not talking about people like Ryan Grimm. I mean, those of us who genuinely want to defend working people, we have the obligation to call out both elected officials who have betrayed us and also the labor leaders who have betrayed us, and not play this game of deflection and obfuscation. When the blame is on AOC, they get to say, oh, it's the labor leaders. And when the blame is on the labor leaders, they get to say, oh, it was the Democrats or Biden. They are all together betraying working people.
Okay, well, I would say just go listen to the interview with the workers that Chapo posted. It's called BMWED, Rank and File United. Those
Ryan,
are
one of those two workers was just on Bad Faith podcast last week.
And the other of those two workers was on Due Dissidence last week. So Chapo Trap House interviewed two workers, one of them being Devin Mance. And we interviewed Devin Mance before the poseurs at Chapo Trap House interviewed Devin Mance. All right, so we can speak to what Ryan Grimm says about Devin Mance, and this is going to be really interesting. So let's hear what he has to say, and then we're going to pause it and give our take, because we talked to Devin also.
I mean, if you listen to that interview, the other point that Devin makes is that this, as far as he's aware, it's the first time using the Railway Labor Act that a PEB, like a bargain that was kind of brokered by the president, has ever been strengthened, that this sets a precedent. Perhaps it's been done for airlines, but it has never happened before with rail workers. It's always been, here it is, we're shoving this down your throat, take it. So for the House to make it actually better sets a new precedent.
Precedent for what?
So they've been stalling this, that Congress can actually make a deal for workers better. And there's a reason he cares about this, and he explained it. The carriers have been stalling for 3 years, as you know, you've covered this.
Yes.
And the reason that they've been stalling is because they know that they can just jam it down their throats using the Railway Labor Act and using Congress, right? So now that has changed a little bit, because now you have a situation where the House has actually made it better. So if they're 2 years away from their next contract negotiation, those negotiations practically start now. Actually, they still have to wrap up the last one, but they're going to start negotiating their next contract very soon.
What an absurd point that the fact that they caused a little bit of, tension in the halls of Congress over sick leave sets a precedent that they better get a good contract in 2 fucking years.
Right.
What an absurd point. Absurd argument.
Now the carriers know that there is precedent that in the House, with enough public attention, enough organizing, and
we're
enough
coming for you in 2
pressure on them,
years, bitch.
the House might actually make that deal better for workers. So now carriers can't just sit there and say, no, we're not going to negotiate at all. We're not going to bargain with you at all. You're just going to take what you can get.
Oh, they can't.
And so 2 years from now, and that's
course,
what
that is
organizing
certainly
about.
the
It's like,
message when a president literally takes away your ability to strike.
Of course. What he's
the
saying
message is that the railroad workers are in charge.
Right, exactly.
No, what would send that message is if they strike now and shut the fucking country down.
Exactly.
That's what would send that message.
Absolutely.
How good might the deal have been if Congress were not empowered to crush the strike power that gives labor their entire leverage? What kind of bill would we be discussing if we didn't have Congress empowered by the Railroad Labor Act to swoop in and negotiate on behalf of business?
Oh, it would probably be a lot better. But it got 80. But it got 80 votes in the Senate and 290 in the House. So we don't live in that world.
But now, Ryan, we are progressives on a progressive podcast that are talking about the incremental improvement, apparently, to a deal that people have been saying firmly no to, despite any other incremental improvements that have been offered up on the table, because the fundamental crux of the disagreement, the sick days, were not in it. And this is why, Ryan, people accuse you, people have accused other reporters who have been covering this, and Jamal Bowman, AOC, Jonah Furman, others, of basically neutering the power of the moment and providing cover for the establishment. Because at the end of the day, the shift in the conversation from why on earth do we have this bill that enables Biden to crush a labor action? And why does Biden get to still call himself the best labor president since FDR while crushing labor? Instead of having that conversation, vociferously argued by the squad members in the broader left media sphere, we're having a conversation. We are celebrating what are supposed to be the left flank of our political discourse for creating a machination in the House that gave cover to progressives to allow that strike crushing to happen in the first instance.
Maybe the workers don't want to be part of this fantasy play. The workers actually want.
What are you talking?
To get rid of the Railway Labor Act? Good. Let's get rid of the Railway Labor Act of 1923. What are you talking about? There's no, who's organizing that? Coming in here after it's already been enacted and then saying it's done, and then people are going to come in on Monday morning and say they're going to get rid of the Railway Labor Act?
It is just terrible. This kind of obfuscation. It's like, moving the goalpost at every moment to, in order to keep admitting to this undeniable logic that Brianna, you were talking about, that there is no universe where you can describe this as a good thing. There was nothing good to be gained out of voting for a bill without the paid sick leave, with the TA bill, as you were saying. And I see you shifting your arguments, Ryan. Every time you present an argument, you're talking about something else. When you went on the Revolutionary Blackout Network podcast, you said that you're not arguing it's the court. You said you're not arguing it's a good thing that the squad did. And yet your overwhelming emphasis is quote unquote explaining, I'm saying putting quotes because I don't think it explains it, but you're trying to explain and defend their actions. When we talk about them, you say it's Biden. When you say it's Biden, it's the Railway Labor Act, So it doesn't matter what we say. Your goal is to defend the status quo. And I have to say, more than anything else, it is just rotten to hide behind what some supposed worker said in some podcast.
Okay, this is where what she says here is brilliant, and you can tell that Kshama is the real deal, who's really down with the workers, because what she says here is so perceptive, and I can say it's so perceptive because I perceive the exact same thing when I talk to Devin, and I'm sure Russell felt the same way. So let's just back this up and let's play this. It's very, very important, this last bit.
Defend the status quo, and I have to say, more than anything else, it is just rotten to hide behind what some supposed worker said in some podcast. And probably very likely said it in a desperation of not having had a way out, with both their union leaders having failed to organize a strike action and build for mass solidarity nationwide, and with both the Democrats and Republicans selling them out. Yeah, so in that moment of desperation, maybe a worker said that. I don't need to watch that podcast to know which side I am on. I don't need a memo from union rank and file to know which side of a strikebreaker bill to be on.
Exactly. When we talk to Devin Mance and Adam Schiff, but they're talking about Mance here, it was very obvious to me, both during the interview, before we went live, and after we went live, that there were certain things he couldn't say because you know what? He's a working guy. He's got a family to feed. He can't afford to come on a podcast and run his mouth. But you know what? We can. Kshama Sawant can, Brianna Joy Gray can, and Ryan Grimm can. And so why are you using that microphone to make excuses for supposed socialist congresspeople who voted to break up a strike? I don't hold against Devin Mance for being diplomatic, because he was diplomatic. He said, we thank Jamal Bowman's office for working with us and trying to get this through, right? And we even pushed back on him in person. I remember he said, something like, well, they did the best we can for us. And I shot right back. I said, no, they didn't. No, they didn't. And Russell said the same thing. So a worker who has been defeated, who has been crushed, we interviewed those guys the night that this all went down. You could see in their eyes, you can hear in their voice. Go and watch the video. It's on It's on our YouTube channel. They were defeated. You can't then hide behind them and say, well, they expressed gratitude for the squad, so why should you pile on the squad? They were just doing what they... No. They were coming from a defeated place. Look, a union is a political organization. They are unfortunately still joined at the hip with the Democratic Party. And so a working guy who's, I don't know what his exact situation is, but he appears on a podcast, he appears on shows, he appears on us, Chapo Trap House, he was on NBC as well. There are certain places that he's not going to go. That doesn't mean that you, Ryan Grimm, get to hide behind him and say, well, because he was thankful to Bowman, we should lay off Bowman. That's a chicken shit argument. And good on Kshama for recognizing that. You say you can't cite a desperate worker who's just lost a major battle, who now has to play ball because of where he is as a worker and the need to balance whatever his aims are with his short-term needs of putting food on his table. You can't just take that as license to defend strike breakers. They're DSA members and they voted to break a strike. Of course, that should call for immediate expulsion from the organization. There's no question about it. It's absurd.
Well, and it's not an accident that so many of the workers at Grand Central Terminal were retired. Right. For length, and also because I was in a rush, I didn't have their preambles and introductions in there. Most of these guys and women were like, yes, I was a railroad worker for 20 years. I was an engineer for 30 years. Look at how many young guys you see there. And the younger ones, usually their job is they're in a labor organization. They're helping to run a labor organization. These guys who have mouths to feed, who have families, you could tell when we were interviewing them, they were laughing a lot at things that we were saying that were trashing the Democratic Party and the squad, but they couldn't say it. Because they still have to work. The only people really that I saw at that rally who were still working were the Amazon people. I didn't get that. There were some Amazon workers actually holding up a sign supporting communism. Actually, there was like a woman who was speaking on behalf of the Amazon labor union, and the CUNY people, because they can't. I don't think they can just easily fire them.
Right.
But from the laboring classes, I mean, they were all pretty much retired.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Right. And so that's why, if you have no skin in the game anymore for yourself, it's easier to speak out. You know, and look, normally we let it fly on the air. We don't censor ourselves. You guys know that. But in their case, yeah, we were careful not to say certain things because we don't want to get them
forbid
in
we cost
trouble.
them their jobs.
Right. Like, you don't want to get them in trouble. So it's not a knock on Devin that he had to be diplomatic in that spot. I get it, man. I get it.
Okay,
you know, he's a dad, right? I mean, he's got pressures, right? But you can't just, but because of that, you have to take what he's saying with a grain of salt. Not that he's being dishonest, but that he's being diplomatic for the sake of keeping food on his table. And what Grimm was doing there was trying to use his appreciation for the squad's cooperation as an excuse to defend them for voting to break up a strike. Look, of course, the betrayal begins with Joe Biden, right? If Joe Biden had not called for a bill to be sent to him, then there would not have been a bill sent to him. If he called for a bill sent to him that included sick days, you know what? A lot of people who didn't want the economy to shut down would have probably just caved and put the sick days in. So, of course, it starts at Joe Biden. Nobody's arguing that. Kshama even said that. Yes, of course, the betrayal starts at Joe Biden. The question is, what is your responsibility to your movement? And if these squad members join DSA and they run as carrying the banner of worker power, there is no excuse under no circumstance whatsoever to vote to break up a strike.
Of course.
The only
even if only to show where you stand.
Right, exactly. The only obvious caveat to that is if the bill that you're voting for gives the workers everything they want. Right? If Joe Biden said, you know what, we're not having a strike, we can't afford a strike. You know what? These bosses are going to have to meet every single demand of the union workers. Then you may be able to vote for that. Right? Then I could see, okay, because then you're voting to bang the gavel and say the workers win. Okay, that's not a crime. That's not a crime.
Right.
But you vote for a bill that does not meet the workers' terms. You call yourself a socialist? Are you kidding? Are you kidding? Of course they should be expelled. And the DSA, surprisingly, has not voted to expel them. The DSA said, really, no, we don't like that idea. No.
Yeah, they're not clapping now. This really puts the DSA in a tough spot because this is their crowning achievement. The squad is their crowning achievement. And to disown their crowning achievement, yeah, there's a lot of, I would say there's probably a lot of internal deliberation going on over there right now. Also with Ryan Grimm, once again, I know we have people who love him. We have people who hate him. Once again, Jimmy Dore is ahead of the curve. Jimmy Dore was calling out.
He's an Access journalist. He's a DC bureau chief. Go ahead.
He was calling him out years ago. And me and Keaton were both. I think we actually said this on the air. Like, what the fuck is wrong with Jimmy Dore? What is with Ryan Grimm? What's he going after Ryan Grimm for? And once again, every single time Jimmy Dore has said some shit that has sounded crazy or too extreme, he ends up being proven right in the end. Whatever you think about him personally, whether you like him or don't like him, I don't think any honest analysis can fail to see that Jimmy Dore has been right more often about this kind of thing than anyone else in this space.
Yeah, no. I mean, look, credit where it's due. You know, the other thing, I mean, there's a million clips that we could have played here. We could have played this whole episode. I listened to the whole debate. It was fascinating. There was a million clips that we could have shown from this. But the other thing that I just want to close on here is that we have to dismiss this notion that there was a push, quote unquote, for paid sick leave alongside the bad bill. There's no push for paid sick. There's no... That's a word you have to listen for. When you hear politicians saying they're going to push for something, push means bullshit, right? Push means you're about to get sold out. There was no push to pass paid sick leave through the Senate because everyone knew sick leave could not pass the Senate. They knew it so much that Raphael Warnock couldn't be bothered to leave the campaign trail to come and vote for paid sick leave. He abstained. Now, if there was a possibility of passing this, don't you think they'd have called his ass up to D.C. to cast a vote? But they knew it was a failure. That's why they let him skip out on the vote.
Course.
So the idea that there was a push for paid sick leave is nonsense. There was no push. Therefore, to vote for the bad bill was to vote to break up the strike and fuck the workers. Period. End of story. To pretend otherwise is, as Kshama said, just shocking and dishonest.
With Ryan Grimm, my theory would be that once you are in Washington like that, you get Washington brain. I don't even think that it's really so much an access thing with him, or from what I understand, they get paid pretty well at The Intercept for the industry. I don't think it's really that. I think once you're there, you absorb the logic of Washington. I think if you're there year after year, you start to see things from that perspective. Well, of course, it's impossible to get a vote like that. So what else could you do? It makes you think like that after a while.
Sure thing. And look, it is true that any stance here would have been symbolic in nature because there was broad bipartisan support to fuck the workers. So in the end of the day, was there anything the squad could do to get paid sick leave? No, but that's not the point. The point is, if you're going to stand with workers and build credibility with workers and build a movement underneath your candidacy and your tenure in Congress, then you have to be on the right side of issues like this. You cannot vote to break up a rail strike, period. End of story. It's not an argument. It's not an argument. And him trying to say, well, they could have voted no, yes, maybe, but they voted yes, yes, because they saw it as a Hail Mary. That's what he said. They saw this as a Hail Mary.
He's fallen into that habit of corporate media of treating politics as a game of mahjong. It's all about the flourishes and the strategy, and it's not about the actual policies or the principles behind them. It all becomes this game of it becomes really like a court watching in the sense of Louis XIV court, right? It's watching the royals. Oh, well, the reason that they did this is because Lady Pompadour was cited at the theater last night. And he's falling into that. I think he's been there too long. And you're surrounded by these people. And in terms of access, I don't think he's doing it for access, but when you're a Washington journalist, access is an advantage. And over time, access means you talk to these people. You're surrounded by these people. You have drinks with these people. You have dinners with these people. You absorb eventually the worldview of these people.
Right.
I think that's a lot of what Jimmy Dore detected first. And now it's becoming increasingly apparent that Ryan Grimm has Washington brain.
All right, everybody. Well, that is just about our show. We want to plug our Patreon once more and thank our patrons on the patron scroll. Last call for questions, comments, donations, super chats. Anybody have any questions, anything they want to say here? I'll look
more
back
money, more
here.
money. Is Red Z the only person who gave us money tonight?
He's
Red
the only
Z's
one today.
He's not going to be able to eat tonight.
He's the MVP of the stream, Red Z. Thank you to Red Z. But thank you to everybody for tuning in, obviously.
This whole stream was supported by one man or woman.
Or woman.
Or woman.
This stream is brought to you by Red Z.
Or they.
Whatever
Sam,
it was.
Whatever floats your boat.
Whatever floats your boat. Absolutely. Well, we want to thank our patrons and our paid Substack subscribers. I want to give another shout out to Robert Penner, who helped us shoot that footage. Thank you so much. It was a great evening there at Grand Central Terminal. So thank you, Robert. And obviously, Russell did a very good job editing together that mixed media footage in less than one day. So that came out really well. We want to thank Ellen, our patron caller, for calling into the show. Patreon members get bonus videos and call-in access to all of our regularly scheduled live streams. So please sign up if you can. Patreon.com/Do Dissidents. I will post that in the comments. And we also got a couple other Substack subscribers here. Join our Substack, dodissidents.substack.com. I'll put that in the chat.
That's nice. Even though it's not a super chat, it's so nice. I'll put it up.
What's that?
Do Dissidents would actually be a great program to work for because currently they have their integrity intact. That's right. Get to us before we sell out.
Get to us before we sell out. Well, we'll still give you sick days, right? Oh, look, Red Z is just showing off now. Showing off, piling on. Go ahead, do it. Hit the button. I won't jump over you. Figure out what's important. Sell us on it, or let's fix this. I want to know what's important. All right. Well, we will. Right?
Love, laughter, friendship,
Absolutely.
and family.
Absolutely. That is what is important. No doubt about that. Was there anything else that I had? Were there any other plugs? Anything that's coming up? No, we have some good stuff coming up next week and over the weekend.
We are going. We're not going to announce who it is, but we have a very special guest lined up.
Well, not for a
Not for
specific
Sunday,
time, but they are coming up soon.
Yes. We have a very special guest coming up.
Yes, we can't announce it until we have it locked in. But yes, stay tuned. So, all right, I believe that is everything. Oh, yeah, the Substack. That's one of the things I just wanted to finish my pitch there. If you go to dudissidents.substack.com, you can sign up and get all of our podcast posts and articles emailed directly to you so you never miss anything that we drop. You can sign up for $5 a month. That really helps us, but you can also sign up to Substack for free. So even if you can't pitch in $5 a month, sign up. This way you know you'll stay in touch with us no matter what happens between us and the big tech overlords. All right. Thank you guys very much for watching. Thanks to our callers. Thanks to our patrons. Thanks for a lively chat. As always, we will see you back here Sunday night at 7 p.m. In the meantime, be safe, be well. Bye-bye.
Courage.
Please clap.